Utah's Division of Child and Family Services once tried to force the parents of a boy named Parker Jensen to have him undergo chemotherapy for Ewing sarcoma. That polarizing, highly publicized case began more than 5 years ago and has continued since then in the courts.
A federal court yesterday threw out a lawsuit from the parents of Parker Jensen, but the boy's family says their battle is far from over.
I remember the call. The oral surgeon said, "Hey, you need to come on in and we need to discuss the results." And he sat us down and he says, "Your son has cancer." And how devastating that was to hear that your 12-year-old has cancer.
When that MRI came out, there was nothing there. They could not find anything in the MRI, and that was our first kind of, I guess, relief. Like, whoo, you know, it's not as bad as they had said it to be. And they did, you know, a bone scan, and that came out negative, and they did a CT scan, and they did chest x-rays and all these things to try to find some cancer, and every one of those tests came out negative. Yet the doctor still kept saying, well, we still expect you to come, you know, Thursday morning to start chemotherapy.
He said I had invisible cancer and that I had to do chemotherapy anyways.
We saw all these efforts to try to just rush and railroad the Jensens and Parker into chemo. You know, that's not normally the way doctors behave. Almost a year of chemo with bad side effects is not something that responsible parents would agree to without being satisfied this is really the right thing.
My dad printed off a huge list of all the chemotherapy drugs. I remember looking through all of them, seeing what they did, side effects of each drug, how many there were. On
a lot of the drugs that were just going to make you a little bit sick, as we were told, we found out 2% of the people die. Just flat out die. Others have major organ damage, tissue damage, brain damage, sterility.
Initially, we thought maybe it's just ego.
The doctor that we weren't supposed to see, but we happened to see, had sponsored a clinical trial for a particular disease, Ewing sarcoma, and it was about ready to be shut down unless they got more 12-year-old white male subjects. The pathologist in the lab was pressured into assigning it Ewing sarcoma. They haven't even taken a blood test yet, and they were forcing chemotherapy, and they reported to the state that he had 2 weeks to live.
If people know that they have that ability, that power, it's just a matter of time before somebody will abuse it.
My parents have always known best, and I can't really ever say that they've ever made a mistake, parenting-wise.
Early on, he looks up at Barbara and I, and he says, "Mom, Dad, I'm not sick." And it just solidified in us that we're right. He is not sick, and we got to fight this.
Now the case goes to the state court and the Federal Court of Appeals, where the Jensens hope there is a final decision on whether their right to decide what is best for their son was violated.
I didn't want chemotherapy because looking back on all the tests, like, they were telling me that they were negative. The doctors were saying that they were negative. Everyone's saying that it was clean. I don't want this, that I want them to just leave us alone.
That's when we were threatened that they would take him away, and we had 3 days to get our case together against the state. We finally found the Brzezinski Institute. We were going to take Parker to have this second opinion. When they found out, they issued warrants for our arrest. Little did we know that the fight would be World War Jensen.
Here the fundamental charge was that you were somehow negligent parents. Negligent because the government knows best.
We would get to a point of disparity where you had the feds looking for you, you had the local police, you had the state police. We're basically in exile because we have these warrants out for us.
One night Darren said, you know, if I go to jail, you are not to bring Parker back. You are not to turn him in. And Darren was charged with kidnapping his own son, and because they were neglecting to treat him.
For several weeks, my family was on the lam, I was in jail. I mean, I'm willing to be responsible if I make a wrong decision. That's what parents are for.
Darren and Barbara Jensen charged with kidnapping and medical neglect because they refused chemotherapy for their son.
What really kills me is at the end they said that we didn't win, we just didn't lose either.
Yeah, it was our non-loss.